So welcome back to 100 miles in 20 hours. Today I'm going to talk mainly about diabetes and running with diabetes. So if you have a friend or if you find it interesting yourself, stay tuned. This was actually a request coming from Gail. He's the race director at Österlentrail. And I raced there 2 weeks ago roughly. I had some high expectations of that race. And I really want to test it out, my performance and how I've done my training and see if I was getting any results. Unfortunately, I fell pretty flat in that one, and it's partly due to diabetes at least. So I'm going to take you through at the end of this, kind of that race from a diabetes perspective to look at what happened with the blood sugar before and during and after the race and so on. So hopefully that should be interesting, at least for people with type 1 diabetes running ultras, so not that many of you. So before we get into the diabetes thing, I wanted to give you a little bit of an update on the latest training and so on. And after Österlen, it was of course time to get ready for Snowdonia. And I was kind of lucky because I had this work trip planned for Italy to Maggiore, and just behind the hotel there is quite a big mountain, so 1500 meters climb, so perfect. And I brought my poles and everything, and I climbed that mountain. It was very good. I was getting into kind of also the mental preparation of doing Snowdonia. And then on the downhill I fell pretty hard. And thought it was okay. It was a lot of blood and everything, but more scrapes and bruises. And I got back to the hotel, so that was another hour of running or something like that. But then later that night it started to hurt really, really bad, and I had to go to the emergency in the middle of the night. And they did an X-ray. They said it's a fracture, and then they put me in a cast. So got my arm in a cast there for the whole week, working in Italy. And then I got back to Sweden because they asked me to check it up when I got back to Sweden to do a MRI scan. And I kind of was out of pain at the end of the week. And at the hospital in Sweden, they didn't find any fracture. So the doctor came back and said, yeah, you can do whatever you want. And I just looked at her, it's like, can I do really whatever I want? Yeah, you can do, you're free to do what you want. Can I run 100 miles in the mountains in 2 weeks' time? And she said, yeah, go for it. And I was like, wow. So that week in Italy was kind of a mental roller coaster. So first I was all excited of preparing for Snowdonia, getting ready. And then of course I had a fracture, so I could see myself in a cast for another 6-8 weeks, missing out on both Snowdonia and Lavaredo. And then coming back to Sweden, getting all that good news that I could do whatever I want. So now I'm all in it again. And the final update I wanted to make, because I had mostly sickness, and I mean the training has been good, but I haven't really been showing the progress in the races and so on. So today I actually did a lactate test. The same one that I did back in January, and my LT1 was 30 seconds faster than it was back in January, and LT2 was also like 20-30 seconds faster, so quite a big improvement. And it could have been even better if I wasn't sick that much this spring. And it also proves that the ambitions I had for Österlen, I think I could have reach those goals if I didn't have a really bad day on that occasion. So some good news in the end, and now we're getting ready for Snowdonia. So what is diabetes? There are 2 types of diabetes, at least 2 types, so type 1 and type 2 diabetes. And to control your blood sugar level, you need insulin. So that's common for everyone. With type 1 diabetes, you're not producing any insulin anymore, so you need to inject through a pump or a pen, like every time you eat, and then also you have a basal rate, like in the background going on all the time. With type 2 diabetes, you are still producing insulin, but due to kind of lifestyle choices, overweight, etc., you're not very sensitive to the insulin you produce. So that's why either you do a lifestyle change that could help, or you might need to take medication as well. So they're actually very different type of diseases, and type 1 is like a chronic disease that we're gonna have forever unless they find some cure somewhere in the future. So in theory, it's easy to manage diabetes. It's mainly two things that influence your blood sugar. So one being the carbs that you eat, and the other one is insulin. So one of the main strategies is to count all the carbs that you eat and then inject insulin accordingly. So that sounds very easy in theory, but in reality that balancing act that needs to happen 24/7 every day, every day for the rest of your life is very difficult, because there are a lot of other factors that influence us as well. So I mean, first of all, how much carbs do I have on my plate? That's very difficult to make a judgment. Of course, I know that eating pasta is more carbs than eating an omelette, for example, but then if I order a pizza, how many carbs is that? I might not have a scale, so it's not very practical and very difficult. Also, the sensitivity of insulin varies across the day. So in the morning, you might need more insulin for the same amount of carbs than in the afternoon. Stress levels impacts. If you have been training, that makes you more sensitive to insulin. Also, another complication, so to say, is the timing. So if you do sports drink, that's very quick. If you do pizza, it's actually a lot of fat in that slows it down, so that could raise the blood sugar several hours later. And with insulin, it's also not very fast, so you don't get the full effect until 3 hours later or something like that. Very difficult balance, and even though I had it for 25 years or so, I never figured out this. I'm still surprised on a daily basis, and no positive surprises. It's mostly negative and can be extremely frustrating. Something you will never learn, basically. So, but you kind of have to learn to live with it. So it's a little bit like dealing with an ultra. Whatever you planned, it's not going to happen. You know it's going to be a lot of fuck-ups along the way, so to say, but you need to accept it and do the best out of it. So I think that's kind of more how you have to approach it to some degree, and that's not always easy. So I'll talk a little bit about the tools for managing diabetes as well. So of course we have insulin, but then there's different ways to inject that. So you could have pens or shots. You could have a pump. So different ways of doing it. So for each meal, you basically need to count the carbs and then inject accordingly. And then also you have a background dose, you could say, like a basal it's called, that acts over 24 hours or so. So that's always in the background what you need. One of the big inventions in the last couple of years has been the CGM. It's continuous glucose monitor. So someone might have seen that, some like triathletes and marathon runners are having that on their arm now as well. So that's constantly monitoring the blood sugar level, and that helps a lot, of course, to see not only where you are right now, but also where you're going, to see the trend. And then you can be a little bit more proactive with the diabetes. Yeah, so this is the pump, and basically you have a graph there, probably difficult to see, but that tells me where the blood sugar has been. It kind of shows me the range. So before we had that, you only took a finger prick, you saw what you had, and then you maybe had to correct either by eating a lot of sugar because you were going low, or you had to correct with additional insulin because you were going high. So much better these days with having both the pump and this glucose monitor system. However, the pumps, it sounds good, like they could deal with everything, but they are not automatic or anything like that. So for every meal that I take, I still need to count the carbs and then inject accordingly. So the only thing where it helps really is the background insulin, the basal dose. It can kind of increase or decrease depending on, trends and so on. So still a lot of hassle to deal with your diabetes. So I also wanted to talk about exercising with diabetes. That can be really intimidating because exercise impacts blood sugar a lot as well. It's almost like taking extra insulin when you exercise. It will drive it down. So before you go out on exercise, you need to bring down the insulin level. Maybe you have a snack before as well, because typically, or what could happen during exercise is you're getting very low, and that's not a place where you want to be. If you're getting too low, it's like being hitting the wall in a marathon, being drunk at the same time and losing all common sense. So you make a lot of stupid mistakes and so on when you're in that low state. So cannot really recommend that, and that's why I think people also with diabetes are a little bit scared, intimidated of going out and doing the exercise. But fundamentally, exercise is very good for you. It increases the insulin sensitivity and so on. So it is a good thing. But you should bring down the insulin, take a snack before, and then always bring with you some kind of candy or sugar or sports drink. So you, in case of emergency, because that will happen multiple times when you're out running and so on, that you're gonna go low, so you need to then drink a lot of sports drink or take dextrosol or whatever. So that's also a general tip. If you meet someone with diabetes struggling, give him sugar, not insulin, because that's typically what's more the typical emergency situation for a diabetic is being low rather than high. So those are the general advices, and don't be afraid. I mean, it's not pleasant to be low, but you can get out of there by having some sugar with you as well. So that's my main advice, but keep that sugar with you. So then I wanted to finish off a little bit with what happened during Österlentrail and how I was managing the diabetes in that race. So I woke up early in the morning, like 4 hours before start. I had my oatmeal that I know exactly how many carbs it is. I know exactly which dose I should take with the oatmeal, and because of being a little bit stressed before the race and having the adrenaline, I took a little bit extra insulin as well, because I know I'm gonna be typically high before the race. And also I wanted to do this 3-4 hours before, because that's how long time it takes for the insulin to have its full impact. So otherwise you might see a peak and it doesn't have time to go down before the start. So anyway, when we were driving to the start line, I could see that the blood sugar was just going straight through the roof. And of course, you getting a little bit stressed and nervous about having that situation. You don't want to be sky high, so to say, going into the race. So then I took a lot of correction doses, which was the big mistake. So yeah, you're being stressed, so you don't really know what to do and so on, and how to get it down. So sometimes it could be other problems. But then as soon as the race started, of course, the blood sugar just plummeted. And I was even lucky to stop it in time, because it was going down to 4 millimole per liter, which is very, very low. So I mean, that's when you kind of start to feel drunk and hitting the wall in a marathon when you're that low. So a little bit of that feeling. But during the race, maybe because it was a race as well, I didn't feel it impacting that much. But of course, I had very heavy legs for the whole way. But then basically, for the whole race, the pump shut off itself, because the exercise itself brings the insulin down. And at the same time, as I was, during those hours, I was consuming like 500 grams of pure sugar. And still I was just about having it floating above, not passing out, so to say. So I was kind of lucky that I didn't end up in that I had to stop, basically, because that's the worst thing that could have happened, I guess. But I was almost also running out of sugar when I reached the first aid station. So I was really emptying my pockets for all sugar, and it lasted in that low state until the finish line. And then what typically happens at the end of an exercise is that it can skyrocket as well. So you kind of have a very weird effect, but as soon as you stop, the blood sugar goes very high. And that's exactly what happened as well. So that happens, of course, during training as well. And actually, during training, something to mention is that if you do aerobic, like slow pace, then typically the sugar goes down. But if you do like heavy weightlifting or anaerobic stuff, you can actually bring the blood sugar up. So that's another weird thing that you have to learn to deal with. But anyway, back to the race. So I think, yeah, I mean, I didn't have to stop because of the diabetes, but it definitely had some impact, and that's probably why I didn't really run as fast as I was hoping for. So the big lessons learned there is that you have to stay cool in the beginning, let the insulin do its job, and just wait for it to happen rather than stress and inject extra. And then also the learning from the race itself is to, when you have a bad day, could be a bad insulin day or bad day in general, you just have to enjoy it instead, because I was actually being a little bit unhappy in the race and not so talkative to people, and yeah, so that's my takeaway from the race. Stay more happy whatever happens and make the best out of it. I didn't do that in this race, but anyway, now I'm looking forward to Snowdonia, so that's going to be great. So hope to see some of you out there, and yeah, I will definitely make a film out of that adventure as well. So, and if you have any questions on diabetes or anything, yeah, feel free to send me a comment, and I will be answering. So have a good one. Bye bye.